Hello, welcome to the Selectmen's meeting for January 7th, 2014. Happy New Year. Call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Colin McNabb present.
Sulicio present, all two of us. I'd like to announce that the meeting is being tape recorded. We have chairman's additions or deletions, and we're actually deleting 2.1 and adding 4.3. 4.3 is vote, it's an appointment. 1.4, review and approve meeting minutes from December 19th, 2013. Did you have a chance to review them?
I did. I make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes for December 19th, 2013.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2.2, it's not quite 7:15. I would guess that more people are coming. We'll skip down, okay? 3.1, vote to accept gift of network servers from Sterilite Company.
Sterilite has come through again with their great generosity to the town. They donated 3 servers to us, computer servers for our computer network. They were 3 years old, I think. They weren't very old, but they have a routine replacement schedule that they follow, and they were good enough to offer them to us, and it helps to address some of the infrastructure needs that we have with our IT network. So again, would like to express our appreciation to Sterilite for their continued generosity, and ask that the board vote to accept the gift. And I also prepared a letter of thanks for Sterilite.
Okay.
I make a motion.
Wow. They are so good to us.
They are. Sterilite is very, very good to us. I make a motion that we accept the gift of network servers from the Sterilite Company.
I'll second that with many thanks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oops. 3.2, discuss the process of responding to requests by those seeking assistance from various poor and worthy funds, including Abram S. French Worthy Fund, Amanda Dwight Worthy Fund, Susan Wilson Worthy Fund, and Albert J. Atwood Worthy Fund.
We have a number of funds that have been set up over the years. I don't recall exactly when they were set up, but funds were left to the town for the benefit of the poor and the worthy. Those were the terms that were used in the trust funds. And they are the 4 that you mentioned, Sue: the Abram S. French, the Amanda Dwight, Susan Wilson, and Albert Atwood. Variety of of worthy funds. And if you recall, at the last meeting, we voted to transfer $3,000 from available funds to the Abram S. French Fund. That spawned an internal conversation here among some of the finance folks, and got us looking at the various trust funds and how they're administered, and it kind of left us scratching our heads. We've sort of all inherited the mechanism by which we process these applications and these requests for assistance, and we, as we were talking about it, we started to say, how do we get to this point where the Abram S. French Fund Committee is the sort of the the agent for all of these committees, and we couldn't
Yeah, they're
find
like
any
the
history.
administrator in a way, right?
Yeah, and we couldn't find any history, and a lot of times these things just sort of evolve very innocuously and with the best intentions, but we had no background on how we got there. So as Kate Stacy, the treasurer, and Kim Fales, the accountant, and Renee Fossey from the French Fund Committee were talking, and myself were talking about it, we said, we really should sort of talk about how we do this, make sure we all understand it, and if we need to, come up with a different way of administering these funds. As far as we can tell, the Abrams French Fund Committee became the sort of default agent for these other trust funds, and they've operated in accordance with the way that the Abrams French Fund trust document tells them to operate. The primary piece of that being that it's all confidential, the names are confidential. But the French fund is the only one that says that the name shall remain confidential. The Atwood, the Wilson, and the Dwight don't say anything about confidentiality. Not that we want to publicize necessarily who's in need, but we couldn't really figure out how the process developed, and so we thought it was appropriate to ask the board to bring the board up to speed and ask the board for some direction and some thoughts on how we address these requests in the future. We can sort of leave it the way that it's been and explicitly delegate the task to the Abrams French Fund Committee. We can delegate it, I suppose, to the trustees to the trust fund committee, or the board could do it at a regular meeting, or you could delegate it to staff. And one of the other pieces that has come up is that a lot of these requests come with a very short timeline. Mm-hmm. People are at the end of the month, they've got a mortgage payment or they've got a Unitil bill or something like that, and they need assistance within a few days. And with the open meeting law requirements that the French Fund Committee has to follow, and then with the Board of Selectmen schedule, it can build in, or worst case scenario, 2-week or more time lag. And so, as we were talking this through, we thought it might be appropriate if the board is agreeable to allow some sort of a staff level group to address these things. In order to avoid those, in order to be more, nimble, I suppose is a good way to put it. That has its own issues in terms of accountability and oversight by the board, since the board is ultimately responsible for the use of these funds.
So none of the funds, none of these trusts, if you will, mm-hmm. have stipulations on them as to who would find people eligible or not?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
How many?
Except for the French fund, it said there shall be a committee.
Okay, so the French fund has a committee, and that committee, for the benefit of everyone, including myself, is created how? We appoint that committee?
Yes, we appoint the French fund committee.
So people volunteer, and we appoint.
Correct.
Okay. The others?
The others are silent. It just says, I set aside this sum of funds to be used for the benefit of the poor and worthy.
Okay, so it's...
there's no mechanism of, if
so
there's a committee...
So there are trust funds where the money from those funds actually have been going into one pot, if you will, and those appointed are the ones that have made the decisions.
They've made the funding, they've made the decision on
Recommendations.
whether somebody is worthy of receiving the funds. And then, the board's secretary in the past made the decision of where that funding came from. So when a request would come in, to say a Unitil bill, the secretary would put it on the agenda and it would say to come out of the worthy fund. But we don't know how that arrangement ever developed. So if that's the way you want to do it, that's okay. It should be sort of explicitly laid out.
Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
You look a little puzzled.
No.
I mean, I'm looking at it, and I guess the question that I have is, if they're an appointed committee, can we give them the authority to approve and disperse the funds, and then it goes on to a warrant and we sign it?
The other funds have to, with the exception of the French fund, have to come through, can't go directly from the committee to warrant. Have to come through the board or through our office. And that's historically what happened. It would come to the board would approve it, or the committee would review it, give it a thumbs up,
So
send
no
it to
matter
us.
who is doing the approving, it still has to come to the board.
Unless you,
for approval.
unless you delegate it to a staff,
Okay.
at a staff level. And you could do that with something like the town accountant, the treasurer, and myself, or council and aging director, or the library director, or something like that. And if you, and I'm not necessarily looking for the board, I know this is all very new, and it took us some time to unravel it to the extent that we could unravel it. I don't think there's a need for action tonight, but if there's a sort of direction that you're leaning, we can try to flesh out a framework that and put something together for consideration at maybe next week's meeting.
I mean, I have no problem delegating it to staff. I would feel more comfortable, I think, if it were more than one staff member
Yes, I
that
would
needed
agree.
to sign off on it.
I think the main goal is to make sure these funds are dispensed in a timely manner for those people who
Exactly.
need them.
So I mean, if, for example, you and the treasurer needed to sign off on it, that,
Or Kim fails.
well, Kim has to handle it anyway,
Yeah.
because she's the accountant, and I wouldn't want to put her in the middle of also okaying it. I'm not sure that
a good
follows good
point.
audit practice, so.
That's a good point.
If she's the one writing the check, so to speak, you know. Or perhaps even you and why don't you come back with a recommendation on the
Okay,
at least two people
okay.
that would have to okay it?
I'll try to put something together for next meeting.
Does that sound okay to you, Colin?
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, close enough to 7:15 or did they pop back out again?
You need to call your committee.
Okay. We don't have a secretary tonight, so we are in order now. Our secretary is enjoying his new baby girl.
Oh,
Congratulations, my new niece.
Nice.
Yeah.
New Year baby, huh?
It was Saturday. Basically, I guess we're here. I'm a little out of the loop here a little bit. I've been kind of off the main pathway. But I think Dawn's gonna bring up some stuff here tonight. And we'll go over it.
I think the purpose of this meeting with you folks tonight is to look at what our next steps are. And as a committee, we met several weeks ago to discuss, what our options are at this point, given that we failed to get before the voters at the fall town meeting. One of the things that came up and we have been looking into was putting out a request for proposal to see if there was any interest in any company or individual that was willing to build and lease a fire station to us. Brett, you can step into, you're the one that kind of helped us through this process. So we kind of looked at this, and Brett has feelers out to some of the contractors, and one individual had shown an interest in pursuing it. Given that fact, I had met with Andy to kind of discuss, and Andy also met with the committee to discuss the ramifications if we went in that direction. One of the things that we had discussed is, does it still come under a capital appropriation, and would that in turn still, the process that we were going to use to build the station anyway was to do a debt exclusion. And according to Andy, that wouldn't be the case because it would become an operating expense, and we would have to look at doing a general override. The other thing that just came up today, I guess he's had discussions with Copeland and Page, and Copeland and Page, and Andy, I'll let you give the details of your discussions with them as to what that would be. Felt that this would still be considered a town project, and as such, we would still have to do prevailing wage.
Okay. I mean, Andy had mentioned to me that that was a possibility, that was one of the options. And that's really why we ended up talking to the attorneys. I looked at it and said, wait a minute, for all intents and purposes, it's a municipal building. It's a municipal project. People aren't going to build a fire station for somebody else to use. Okay, so it can be construed as trying to get around the municipal regulations for building something. And it sounds like that's...
Yeah, it would certainly trigger the prevailing wage law. It's a different kind of animal than if we were leasing office space, for instance, which a lot of cities and towns do. They may be setting up a satellite precinct for a police department, or another council on aging venue, and so it's just kind of office space. You put up partitions as you need them, but it's no different from many businesses. Fire stations are a little bit different. It would trigger prevailing wage because it is still to be used for a public purpose. It's a construction project. There may still be savings over us doing it ourselves. It may be cheaper to find somebody to build it for us than for us to build it. So there could be some savings there, but it will not be it's generally accepted that prevailing wage adds about 30% or more to a project. So you're not going to eliminate all of the, you're not going to save that much by going out to RFP, but there may be some savings to it.
Okay, so prevailing wage means you have to pay prevailing wage.
You have to pay the union rate.
But doesn't it also mean that they need to be, there needs to be an open bidding process and all that too?
Yeah, and as the chief said, there would be, the way we would do this if we wanted to do it would be to go out to a request for proposals. So we would say, we'd put together a document that says we're looking for an individual that would build us a fire station, and it would be something like what is in the feasibility study. And we would We would specify that, we would specify an area of town, presumably a radius, and we would specify a delivery date. You're gonna build this kind of a station with this many bays and square footage in this radius, this portion of town, and you're gonna get it to us by some date certain. And tell us what it's gonna cost for 20 years or 25 years or whatever period of time we wanted to do it. So there would still be a procurement process. It would be different than if we were going to go out to what is traditionally the approach for public construction, which is design, bid, build. In design, bid, build, we would be going with the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. For RFP, we would have slightly different criteria. We might have a more advantageous ranking for a site that was on Main Street rather than something that was a half a mile off Main Street, something like that. So.
And what if we only get one?
Well then, excuse me. If you only get one, then it becomes a decision whether does it meet the criteria first of all, and if it meets the criteria, then you decide is it in the town's interest to accept the bid, accept the proposal, and execute a contract.
And how long would the contract be for?
You'd be looking at I would say at least 20 years, 20 to 25.
And at the end of 20?
I think you could build in a purchase option at the end of it, or at some point, maybe at 15 years, you'd build in some sort of a trigger that says, all right, we're gonna buy it and we're gonna stay here. Or in 15 years, you look at it and you say, well, the fire service has changed from what it was like in 2014. This isn't gonna do us what we need it to do from 2034 on. So there's, as the chief said, there's a couple of options. There's the traditional design, bid, build for a single station. There's the request for proposals to lease something, and then I suppose there's there's do nothing, which I think we all agree is really not a viable option. And then there is, I suppose you could look at going back to a 3-station model where we'd be looking at 2 new stations, one more traditionally located in the center and one out in the western end of town, similar to what we have now.
So is the option that we had on the table before that we were not able to bring to the town meeting off the table now as
No.
an
No.
option?
No.
That's one of the options.
And that's still, I think, option
Option
one.
as far as I'm concerned, because I'd rather go debt exclusion than override, for one thing.
Well, yeah, but,
I mean, that's kind of a given. But,
Generally speaking, I mean, I've done a lot of research into overrides, and specifically for the town of Townsend. And if you go back in the history of the general overrides that there's been a number, and the only ones that have ever passed is for the schools or for trash. Nothing else has ever passed as far as the general override is concerned. The other option that probably is on the table, it's one that I wouldn't recommend, but I mean, it is an option, is to do what the capital planning committee had put forth, and that is to buy the land, do all the site testing that needs to be done, and do the architectural plans, and get another firmer figure. I mean, I don't know how much firmer that it's gonna be than what we already have, and then bring that to the voters. But now you're pushing this out really as that's gonna happen. For that would be next fall. You could go for the spring for the money to do it, and then it would be next fall before you could even bring it to the voters. And then you're looking at the following spring to start building, so.
and most likely an increase in cost.
Yeah, you're probably gonna hit the cost, if not exceed the cost that we have already had built into the study now.
Well, I mean, the cow's out of the barn, they say, as far as that whole thing. You know, I mean, we weren't able to present it to town meeting.
Yeah.
Because capital planning said that they didn't recommend it, and therefore it didn't go on to the voters. My personal feeling is that we need to change the charter having to do with capital planning for projects as big as that, that goes beyond their scope, and that those things have a right to go to town meeting directly. But that's another can of worms that we're gonna have to deal with. It doesn't help us now. Colin, do you have any thoughts on this whole thing?
My only thought on this is that there's several paths we can take, several things that I personally need to think about. So I'm not ready to make a decision tonight. So I would prefer if we table this till next week's meeting.
What I'd like to do, though, is to have us kind of talk about what, if anything, your concerns are, because I have some. And I just want to know how you feel about it, too.
Okay. Before you start that conversation, one thing to think about too, that if you do decide to do the RFP or the lease purchase, is that we need to act on that as soon as possible to get it out and have something back for the voters to vote on come the May town meeting. So time is of the essence on that one.
I mean,
Go ahead.
we are meeting next Tuesday because of some scheduling issues. Is a week going to make
A week.
A difference?
It's gonna make- I'm just, just so that you understand that if it goes beyond that, you jeopardize the ability of us to do anything with that option in time for May.
I'm gonna just tell you how I feel about it. I feel that the original project that was on the table that never got to town meeting is the one that we should pursue. I feel as though the RFP, if you ever got to a point with that of an option to buy, somebody's gonna come back at us and say, this was all designed to keep the town from having to do things the way that the town usually does things, or the town is supposed to do things when it comes to a municipal building. And I don't want to get into a situation where we're gonna have any kind of problem with that. And I can see how someone might complain about that. Oh, those people out in Western Mass decided they were gonna do this and that, and prevailing wage or not, you still are not following the same rules that you would need to follow with the original project. And I don't want our town, I'm concerned about our town's liability, and I don't want our town getting in trouble for doing something that could be construed as going around those rules, okay? I mean, it's our job to make sure that the town is protected and that we're following rules the way that they need to be followed. I feel badly about the time part of this, and I agree, it's probably gonna end up costing the town more money because of the little bit of a holdup that we had.
Speed bump.
Speed bump,
Well,
yes.
Well, it's too bad because we really did think that we were pretty adamant that we could get this thing built for a lot less than 11.3. And it's really too bad because every day we waste on it now.
I
bumps that up.
would also go so far as to, I mean, because it's obvious, it's probably gonna cost a little bit more,
Yeah.
okay, than what you originally estimated. That being said, I would suggest to the building committee that you perhaps go back and look at your design and see if there are places that you could change that design in order to bring the cost down. Okay?
Yep.
Because that's really what you're faced with.
Okay. I
Okay.
understand too that we have expended all of the funds that we had for this project as far as, you know, what we've presented so far. So anything else that we decide to do in order to be able to go back and have the consultants work with us to redesign is additional funding, which we don't have to do.
And that's similar to what capital planning was saying to you. Go back and do this, buy the land and go back and do this and do that and get closer to the number. But all of those things
Takes money.
cost money, okay? So in essence, they were saying, gee, we'll give you a little bit more money so that you can do this next phase. And what I'm suggesting is that the next phase might be go back and look at that design and see if you might be able to cut the cost a bit. Okay? At the same time, I have volunteered to be on the charter committee. I would suggest anyone else interested in being in on the charter committee would sign a volunteer form, fill out a volunteer form, because I would really like to propose to our town that that needs to change. That part of the capital planning needs to change. Okay, now I don't know, is it a charter or is it the bylaw? Because whatever it is, I want to work to present that to the town for a change.
Yeah, it's primarily the bylaw, but the charter does address the capital planning committee, and it's oddly worded. It's almost like
So it
the
needs to
charter was
get
written, and then
fixed.
somebody said, "Oh, don't forget capital planning," and
Yeah.
they threw it in there.
So it needs to get fixed. It needs to be worded in such a way that the intent of the town is what's written there. And I don't think, I can understand how it was interpreted, okay? Because that is what it says. But I don't believe that our town, that the town meeting wouldn't want an opportunity to vote on something as big as a fire station, okay? That when we say capital planning, we don't mean things like, $11 million building. We say, we mean regular capital, buying a truck, things like that. So I think it's limited, and I mean, this is a good exercise to go through. This is what happens when you make laws. You look at the laws and you put them into practice, and when they don't work quite the way they were intended, you make an effort to change them. So, as I said, anyone interested in helping out with those efforts, please come forward. And we'll present it to the town. But that's how I feel about the project. I don't know.
Not to beat a dead horse, but I mean, my position was always that it should go to the voters of town meeting and let the voters decide yay or nay. And it was very frustrating that it was blocked on procedural grounds and the work of the building committee that has, how long have you been working on this project?
Year and a half now.
Year and a half.
It's almost 2.
Finally reaches the point where you're ready to present it to town meeting and it gets stopped before you're allowed to. I don't really have any questions as to the different options myself, but I do want to take a little more time to think about those options.
We can put it on for next week.
Put on for next week. Would you look into would you just look up for me to change the text that might have to be modified?
Brett wanted to.
Sue, I have a question.
Sure.
So we were tasked originally to come up with a fire station. We did that.
Yes.
Then you asked for us to come up with a conceptual plan of 2 fire stations to,
Right.
maybe we could go that route. That didn't work for us. We thought out of the box, we thought about an RFP. That didn't work. So now should we be thinking about how to functionally run this department with what we have?
I don't think you have any choice in that.
Well, I mean, going down, I'm not talking a year out or 2 years out, I'm talking 10 years out, because it seems like every route we try to go, we kind of get stonewalled one way or another. And we're making no ground on this. And now we're back, now, you said, go back and maybe look at downsizing the station, and that's great, but once again, we're out of money, so we really can't go down that avenue anymore.
Well, I don't think you can from a design perspective, obviously.
I think we're cut just about where we are, as far down as we can go, to be honest with you, as far as the building itself.
Well, the only reason I'm challenging you on that one is because I'm on the building committee for the high school.
Yeah.
And we've been challenged on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so, there's always places you can make changes. There are always places you can make changes. They may not be what you want to make, but you can make them. So, so I'll challenge you on that one. And even if it's not something that the designer would actually give you a cost about, having gone through the process, I think you might have some ideas for when that does free up. I don't know what to tell you in terms of timing. I'm still annoyed that we weren't able to bring this to the town meeting floor, because we lost a lot. We lost a lot of time. We probably lost a lot of money because of that, too.
Well, at best now, when would we get in front of the town?
May,
And when's the school going?
March.
So that answers that question.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, the school isn't going to be built that year.
No, it's going to
Okay.
be funded, it's going to be agreed if it's going to be funded, correct?
That's right.
It's certainly a, competitive disadvantage to be essentially on the same timeline as the school.
But when it hits the taxes is another story, too. Okay?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you're agreeing to fund it, but it's not like it's gonna go up the next day and you're gonna have to start paying for it the next day.
Right. The school project won't really hit the taxpayers until probably fiscal 18. So, this project would be built a lot faster than the high school. But,
I mean, so the chances are that the impact to the taxpayer in their bill would happen quicker with your project than it would with the high school.
But with the taxpayer driving by the school every day as they commute back into Townsend, knowing that in 2018 their taxes are going to go up, I don't think that's going to slip their mind.
No, but it does give one a chance to think about things and think ahead and plan for them. And I think that's what people want to be able to do. I'm not saying one is more important than the other one. I'm saying people need to make the decision. They need the opportunity to make that decision, too. And the timing could be better, but it is what it is.
yeah, I think to Brett's first question, should the department figure out how to move forward with what you've got now? I think that in the short term, yeah, you have to. I think once you have an opportunity to go to town meeting, and if town meeting approves it, then go to the ballot, I think at that point, then you have your answer to, if either town meeting says no or it fails at the ballot, then I think on a longer term basis, you have to figure out how to make do with what you've got. I don't think you have to. I don't think you have to cash in your chips at this point, though.
Well, I guess it wouldn't be the building committee anyway, it would be the chief and the selectmen, so at that point, we kind of wash our hands of it.
Yeah.
But I know how much work you put into it. I really appreciate it. I wish I could go back and change things, but I can't.
I have put that project on the capital plan. for this coming year, hopefully as a placeholder. I'm due to meet with the capital committee on the 23rd of the month, so
Oh, maybe I'll stop in.
I hope so.
Do you want the committee here next week for the discussion?
Sure.
Yeah,
If you're available,
we will be.
just in case any questions come up between now and then.
Yeah, we're committed to this thing all the way through, so we'll be here.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Call it out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys. So back to 3.3.
Going back to 3.3. Vote to rescind the December 19, 2013 vote to transfer $3,000 from available funds to the Abram S. French Fund.
At the meeting, the last meeting that we had, the board voted to transfer $3,000. The transfer was requested by the French Fund Committee in anticipation of a number of requests that they had been inquired of. They hadn't been formally received, and now it looks like the assistance is no longer needed. So
Okay.
clear that off the books, and also sort of dovetails in with what we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
I make a motion to rescind the December 19, 2013 vote to transfer $3,000 from available funds to the Abram S. French Fund.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3.4, vote to amend the charge of the Fire EMS Chief Screening Committee by changing the word residents to at-large members. Andy?
Yeah, we, if you recall, we've had some trouble filling out the membership of the committee. When we initially set the charge for the committee, it was phrased, 2 residents, one of whom is affiliated with North Middlesex Regional School District. We didn't have anybody, we had 1 resident come forward, but we didn't have anybody affiliated with the school department come forward. We do have, we've reached out to the superintendent, asked her if there's any staff that lives in town that would be interested. She wasn't able to come up with anybody, but she's willing to serve. She's not a resident. I thought by changing the charge to strike the word residents and insert at-large members covers really what we were trying to do, which was get some buy-in from the district, from the school district. And if the board is agreeable to that, under 4.2, we have an appointment for that as well.
I have no problem with that. As a matter of fact, I think it fills the intent that I had when we first talked about that. I just think it's important that someone representing the schools, because they work so closely with fire and and police, that be a, that they have a representative, and Superintendent Landers would be fine for me.
She is an excellent choice. I think she's very qualified.
So can we get a motion to change that?
I make a motion to amend the charge of the Fire EMS Chief Screening Committee by changing residents to at-large members.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4.1, vote to appoint Richard Howard as full-time telecommunicator and Amy Wolfgang as a part-time telecommunicator, both contingent on a background check, physical and psychological testing, and with a 6-month probationary period.
I make a motion to to appoint Richard Howard as a full-time telecommunicator and Amy Wolfgang as a part-time telecommunicator, both contingent on a background check, physical and psychological testing, and with a 6-month probationary period.
Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4.2, vote to appoint Joan Landers, Superintendent of North Middlesex Regional School District, as an at-large member of the Fire EMS Chief Screening Committee.
I make a motion to appoint Joan Landers, Superintendent of North Middlesex Regional School District, as an at-large member of the Fire EMS Chief Screening Committee.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just if I could add two pieces to this. We had a meeting last night, the committee had its first meeting, and I'm not going to get into any details about who candidates might be or where they may be from. We do have 24 applicants for the
Nice.
chief's
That's
position,
excellent.
which is great. And there's another community in the area that is also looking for a chief, and they didn't get nearly as good a turnout, and we're not sure why, and they're not sure why.
Because
Because we're
Townsend is
wonderful.
wonderful.
It could be simply wonderfulness, and as Bill Cosby used to say. So they've got a fair amount of work ahead of them, and they're going to get right down to it. We've also reached out to the fire chief in Lunenburg, and he has agreed to help us out as a sort of expert to help the committee in its work. A couple of our committee members served on the screening committee that selected Chief Sullivan over in Lunenburg, so
Excellent.
he's paying us back.
Excellent. That's
Yeah,
perfect.
great.
Nice. 4.3, vote to appoint Leon
Nemira.
full-time firefighter, fire prevention officer, as a member of the Fire EMS Chief Screening Committee.
This is the last
Good.
of the positions we had said that we wanted two members of the two call members of the department, as well as one full-time member of the department. So Lee stepped forward just this week and expressed his interest in serving on the committee. So it's really
Good.
good.
I'm very happy that I get to make the motion to fill the committee finally. I make a motion to appoint Leon Nemera, full-time firefighter/fire prevention officer, as a member of the Fire EMS Chief Screening Committee.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5.1, Board of Selectmen updates and reports.
I've got one.
Go for it.
I wish to give my condolences to the family of Gary Evans on his passing. Gary was a cornerstone of the community, and he will be greatly missed. He left us as he lived on a small adventure, and I want his family, as well as his second family, the staff of Evans on the Comm, to know that our thoughts and prayers are with them.
Such a lovely man,
Yes,
always with the smile.
absolutely. He
I
always had a
can't-
smile on his face.
Yeah, always with a smile. He will be missed. And my condolences also to his family. The only other thing that I have is the building committee for the high school is moving right along. As a matter of fact, there is a meeting, a pre-board meeting, I guess is the best way to describe it, with the MSBA this Friday, and several of us are going in to join the designer and the superintendent in the OPM. So that'll be like the last question and answer period, and then I believe it's the 29th, there's another meeting of their board, and hopefully everything is going to go well, and they're going to give us the okay for going forward with the project.
Excellent.
There will be a mailer, we're working on a mailer to go out as a bulk mailer. We missed the boat. It would have been nice if we could have included it with the census, but I think that's a done deal now.
And I don't think we have a tax bill going out.
They went out a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So,
So, and that wouldn't be to all residents anyway, so this is more like the census. So we will be sending that out, and it's really more so that folks know, we're gonna have some tours of the high school, more presentations. There'll be like 3 in a row, concentrating on the different educational modules, if you will, science, technology, et cetera, music and arts and in general. And there'll be 3 nights for that. There'll also be a couple of tours on Saturday for folks who just want to take a tour of the current high school to get a feel for, you know, what are we replacing and why are we replacing it, or why we're asking for it to be replaced. And so we're trying our best to do as much communication as we can, and we welcome anyone's questions and comments and try to get everyone on board with the information they need to make a decision.
I think a tour of the school is well worth your time. I took a tour myself several months ago, and it's good information to see the state of the current building and some of the challenges that the district faces with that building.
That's all I have, Indy.
a couple of things. We had talked at the last meeting about our schedule for January, and then in the intervening weeks,
Keeps changing.
we realized that there was a conflict in there. So the board will meet again next Tuesday, the 14th, and then again February, as it's scheduled now, February 11th. So there'll be 4 weeks between.
I apologize, this is my fault.
I wasn't going to throw you under the bus.
That's okay.
So.
It'll be my fault next time, don't worry.
Right.
There's only two of us, we have to find a way.
We'll make it through.
Yes.
Related to that, being only two of you, we've talked a lot over the last several months about various vacancies on boards and committees, and we're in a position at the meeting next week to potentially fill a couple of those vacancies. But we still have vacancies on about a dozen committees in town, and also for those interested in serving in an elected capacity. Today is the first day to take out nomination papers for a variety of the positions that are open every year.
Do you have a list of what those are?
I do not. Not with me, anyways.
We can read it at the next meeting.
Yeah, it's, this board, planning board, housing authority, trust fund committee,
Town clerk.
town clerk,
Water commissioners?
water commissioners, library trustees, yeah. I can get I'll bring a list for next week.
That'd be great.
And,
Maybe we could publish that list. That'd be wonderful.
Related to that, this would normally be the year that the collector is on the ballot. I received notice today. I've been watching the State House website for the last 3 weeks. I knew that the special act to convert the collector from elected to appointed had been approved by the Senate, had been approved by the House. Found out today that it has been finally signed by the governor and enacted. So that is in place. I will be bringing to you next week an interim collector, and then we posted that back in December. And so I'll be asking the board to appoint an interim collector next week, and to go along with the interim treasurer, and then over the coming next couple of months, we'll figure out the best way to go forward in the long term. So.
Okay.
And then the last thing I have is kind of a shout out and a thank you to the residents. A shout out to the employees of the highway department, facilities department, cemetery department, anybody else that I didn't mention that worked in snow removal in the last couple of weeks. The highway guys especially, highway and cemetery and parks, some of them did around 30 consecutive hours last week, from roughly midnight Wednesday night until the end of their regular shift, or a little later than that on Friday. So it's, you know, it's great on Thursday when you get the check, but boy, is it a drag when you're doing it. It's blood money. It's been a long time since I drove a plow. I don't miss it. I appreciate the work that those guys do, and so a shout out to them, and just a thank you to the residents for being patient with us. We, you know, when you have a storm like we had the other day, and you have or a number of storms like we've had recently, and then the freeze, the thaw, and now the freeze again, there's lots of opportunities for people to gripe about stuff. I think I received 2 calls. So I appreciate the patience of the residents, and it also reflects on the job that our guys are doing. So so thank you. Bear with us as we get through the winter.
Yes, as we get through.
Yeah.
Kudos, guys, thank you.
That's all I've got.
Okay. 5.3, review and sign payroll and bills payable warrants.
I make a motion that we sign the payroll and bills payable warrants out of session.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion that we adjourn at
Sec-
7:57.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
folks.